Hello everyone, I am Slim Othman, the event manager for Architect Hub Qatar, and I will be your host for today's talk. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. We had a very unique topic, which is hybrid space lighting. To tell us more about this subject, we are honored to have with us from Spain, architect Jorge Andreas Gaitan. He's an architect and a light designer. The talk will be moderated by architect Abdullah Al-Bakir. So before starting, let me remind you that we need to keep, everyone needs to keep his mic on mute throughout the presentation. Use the chat to comment or to share questions. After the presentation, we will invite you all to share your comments. Our talk will be recorded and will be on our YouTube and Facebook soon. I'm now pleased to introduce Architect Abdullah. Architect Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Salim. Today we have a lecture about lighting. Lighting and the effect of lighting. With us an expert from Latin America, Architect Jorge. Architect Jorge, and also an engineer, specialized in lighting. Today he will take us on a trip with his lighting experience. Please welcome Jorge.
Well, thank you very much, Abdullah, Meima, and all the team that make this possible. And thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. Okay, so tell me whenever you're ready to share the screen.
Good.
Okay, do you see my screen clearly?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, good. Shall we start? Yes, okay, good. Okay, I'm going to reduce this and I want to start with this quote from Aristotle that says that is during our darkest moment that we must focus to see the light. And it's kind of literally at this moment with all the crisis we've been through this time, but actually to focus on light as one way to go back and renovate the cities and go back to occupy the public spaces, because this is going to end for sure, and we need to be ready, and we need, now we're reopening the cities, we are reopening to the public spaces. So the most sure thing that we can say is that through lighting we can activate the urban space, and we can also combine with our private spaces that we've been improving through these several months of pandemic and stuff like that. So Jean-Charles Grand said that we spend a third of lives at night without light, we will be missing something great. And I'm totally agree, because this is what happened when we transform the city, and when the lights lead the surface and lead a project or lead a space and make everything looks in different reality and change the mood. So the first question that we have is why light? And we have evolved not to only love light, but to need light. So light shape our moods, our makes our modern possible. Of course, life has changed all the evolution of human behavior or human beings. Light create atmospheres, but we use light to help create a visual narrative after dark. And this is where we combine, I call the professional light with the domestic soul. So the domestic soul, I think it is one of the biggest components that lead us to to think about cities and private and public spaces. So light is the main source of energy for all living organisms, both artificial life on Earth, and it's not just an act of source of vitamin D or for humans, but enables side effects mood, improves overall well-being. And if you experiment with light, you can you experience your home. So when we talk about lightful life, we are made of light, we are affected by light, and light shape our lives. Light is the key element for everyday lives, and it guides us through the day, nudging us to wake in the morning, allowing us to sleep by night. So well-appointed task light enhance our experience during the day, or probably a dim lamp can set the mood for a romantic dinner in our family, in our house. So through all the daylight patterns that we try to copy from nature into the real life, we cannot forget never that we're designing for people. And how does light shape our lives? It's like transforming the space that we habit, that we occupy. So it is impossible not to think about light if it's the right way to see the space. And like shape our cities, more and more the world's population becomes urban, and we lose our connection with the natural world. So it becomes plain what the damage is caused. And now we talk about lighting pollution and light pollution. So someone said that the city that never sleeps is made up of millions of individuals that breaks natural cycles of work and repose, and lose sight of the sky is like being rat in a lab. Uh, so there are many effects of light pollution and energy waste in our cities created by bad practices in lighting design. And there are many physical and psychological connections that change human health, change natural life, flora, fauna, and the damages are wide-reaching. So when we think about exploring light and darkness as a priority to public spaces, uh, we have given a lot of importance to light, but we have ignored darkness just as it would not exist, but actually we cannot think, one could not come to life without the other. So light is measurable energy, by darkness is defined as the absence of light, and is something that usually is not measurable. So there are no reference for darkness. There are no units to measure lead and no tool to detect it. But when we talk about visual perception, this is what comes to my mind when we were occupying the spaces and we're habitating our cities. So uh, when we talk about light and darkness, uh, for sure it's been explored by painting and architecture, and we have to always talk about how the chiaroscuro reveals the relationship of light and shadow to transmit effects and emotions. And we can see that through the painting, through the art. So darkness has a strong meaning. And when we talk about designing darkness from the point of view of different cultures, from literature to art and or architecture, we need to understand that is darkness reflects more than just a physical effect. It's not possible to think about a space of architecture without light and darkness combined together. But for different reasons, we have given a lot of importance to light, but we still ignore darkness. Our public spaces in our city are the combination and the perfect balance of both. But there was a poem that is the name is "The City of Dreadful Night," by James Thompson in 1874, and it was illustrated by, by this painting of Duret, and he was talking about the Victorian London and how the public space and how the private space extends a little bit beyond the barrier, beyond the borders of the city, and it's a kind of description of that very dark space that we're afraid to be on, and that we're creating and we're open to accept that difference, that without darkness, penumbra, umbra, and without all that combination, so we cannot create this and we cannot create public spaces and see architecture. So you can see the light without darkness for sure. And, and darkness is the key for visual perception. We don't see because we have more light. We can have a clear vision because we have a high contrast. And when we talk about luminance levels, we talk about luminance. When we talk about how many luxes we have in a space, we talk about how how many foot candles can our eye perceive in space. So we always aware and concerned about the horizontal surfaces in the space. But the way we understand the space is a vertical perception. More than the 80% of the time, we are seeing vertically. So that means we need to focus on backgrounds. We need to compose two different layers of light on the spaces. So space is nothing without light. And that container of light that we call the space is heated by light and reveals the form, reveals the shape, reveals the material. Light has a positive impact on people, affecting their physical, emotional, and mental states. And I said that light affects our activities, by darkness affects our emotions. And we need to think about the city, and we need to think about the urban lighting and the public space in an emotional way, not just in a technical way. So when we think about emotions and innovation that explores the transformative power of light and its ability to possibly impact their lives of individuals and communities by promoting well-being and creating more opportunities for economies to take place at different hours of the day. So all these spaces that we're used to occupy in this period of our lives, we have noticed actually the change of being inside of a permanent interior condition. And someone said that the internet has not decreased the importance of physical mobility. Instead, the digital information of the internet has begun to merge with physical space, leading to new type of hybrid spaces. So go back a little bit to check this Jetsons cartoon back in the 70s and in the 80s. So we're not very far from this. We now talk about the internet or teleconsultancy through doctor's appointment. We've been monitoring all the way we sleep. We're doing some video conferences in our houses, in our offices. We can actually get connected to the gym routine without being out of home. And this is becoming more real day by day. So when we think about communication and the hybrid space, understand like the combination of public and private areas, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. So when we think about this and the chance to do such a different activities. So we need to think that all those early theories that margin the individuals will begin to living most of their lives online and decrease the importance of physical mobility and urban spaces. So the point is, internet has not decreased the importance of physical mobility. The digital information that we have on internet has begun to merge with physical space, and we need to talk about hybrid spaces with mixed activities. And so when we talk about this type of spaces, if I refer to interior spaces, but actually it happens the same to exteriors, to outdoor spaces. So we need to think about hybrid space lighting. We need to talk about hybrid spaces with we combine different activities. And so the main aim of creation of hybrid spaces is limiting the transport needs and improving environmental conditions by introducing a green environment and many types of green element spaces, increases amount of pedestrian spaces and bicycle routes. So there is a need of multifunctional experiment public spaces and buildings in the design process. And it's very important to integrate addition of different disciplines in order to create this. Now we talk about the smart home, the smart kitchen. Everything is connected. We talk about IoT. So when we think about the Internet of Things, and we talk about mobility, television, uh, different fixtures, food, spaces, other, all that we can group in just one word like IoT. So it's not impossible, it's not possible to think in a separate way from the public space to the private space, because we are now making these interior spaces portable for all the users that can have access just to a single Wi-Fi connection, to be remotely connected with their own with their own houses or with their own offices. We cannot cook from our house just following the recipe straight from the internet and right beside our oven. But working in your house, doing what we call the home office work that we've been used to these more than 12 months. So it has actually uh, created a revolution on the way we perceive the hybrid space, because it's not now a fixed space where we used to occupy before. We work in the kitchen, we work on the living room, we work on the terrace, we work on the patio, we work in the middle of a bench in a public area. And the people are more actively, we talk about aging. So images like this needs to be understand that lighting possibilities has to improve the quality of perception and comfort and visual comfort, because it's not the same to work on a place for a person from 20 to 40 years than 4 years up. So we need to think about this when we talk about lighting for different type of spaces. So um, there are both hybrid public spaces and hybrid buildings. So we can observe many positive phenomena as well as negative changes, which influence mostly natural environment of living condition. So when we talk about rapid development of motorization, congestion, and increasing of pollution, so we're talking about deterioration of city and the process of decreasing spaces and insufficient recreational possibilities. And we have a lot of sleeping disorders in our own houses just because we have light pollution and there's a lot of light coming out from the streets. We are talking about digitalization. Now we talk about creating experience. And when we talk about this, it comes to my mind some phrase, some quotation from Albert Einstein that says, I feel today that technology will surpass our human interaction, so the world will have a generation of idiots. So thinking about urban lighting, and when we're talking about urban lighting, we really need to think about three aspects that I consider. The first one is uh, to circulate, to move, to create different patterns moving out to the space, to the exterior space. The second one is to remain in a space, occupy a space. And the third one is to contemplate the space. So light has to actually uh, be good enough to do all those three activities because we're occupying the public areas and we are redefining the public space. So when we talk about hybrid space lighting and we talk about hybrid spaces are today everywhere in our daily lives. From the communication space of mobile telephony, which create illusionary islands within public spaces, to monitor environment with camera, keep watch, and the workplace becomes an integral part of home. The office becomes a space of encounters. Are an extension of the same lounge atmospheres that we create in the interior areas. So hybrid space focuses therefore on hybrid fields emerging from the combination and fusion environments, objects, and services within network systems of production, distribution, use, and recycling the information and communication age. So there's a different multiplicity of dimensions when we talk about the expansion of hybrid space, considering that we are combining the physical space and the media networks and building a space and natural environment as well. So I was talking yesterday, a couple of days, with a friend about the name of this. Hello. Um, about the name of this talk, and I said hybrid space lighting, and she said, "Well, it comes to my mind a word that is it's in French is a mélange, it is a mix." So when we talk about the notion of hybrid, and we go to the bad negative connotation, today the notion of hybrid is everywhere. Is hybridization becoming an increasingly important phenomenon, and also with cultural hybridization within the fields and for example the cultural sphere. So the hybrid turned into a strategy today to our cities, and there's a lot of challenges needing to be addressed from multiple perspectives when we talk about climate, sustainability, heritage, urban development, mobility, health, tourism, retail, and being interwoven with each other and new hybrid fields emerge. So combining knowledge from different fields enabled to address the complexity and transferring concept of ideas from one field to another and helps reframe challenges and opening paths for innovative approaches. So going back to the public space and the hybrid space approach, therefore develops hybrid strategies of crossover drawing for recognition that transferring ideas from one field to another, and it's a recipe for cultural innovation. So it is not possible not to mention the nighttime design perspective that we are used to hear these days. So the perfect combination between daytime design and nighttime design, and both creating our different perception or our cities. The city during the day has one different approach than the city by night. So all those public areas and all the combination of all those public areas and the public buildings and the public spaces, it is very important to think about this when we try to define the nighttime design and the daytime design combination. So in the context of the 24-hour city, it's time to consider urban lighting after dark as an inherent part of urbanism. And when we talk about well-designed nighttime lighting can influence for sure the way we use and enjoy a city, the way you move around its streets, and even the way you feel. Focus on designing inclusive environments for nighttime. So this slide here shows a little bit about the nighttime design initiative in New York by Leni Schwerdniger. And she talks about the three different pillars that I consider very important, which is the public safety, the public health, and the economic vitality for everything. So, so there are different patterns. Okay, I am changing the screen. Would you please confirm if you see it in my screen?
It's not moving. It's freezing on the picture.
It is freeze?
It's freezing.
Frozen?
It's stopping in one slide. It's not moving anymore.
Okay, okay, but give me 1 sec, please.
Okay.
Let's do it again. Okay, I will share it again, just in case. Okay. Okay. Okay, hold on just a minute. Okay, do you see it?
Yes, slide 110, yeah?
Okay, it is a Sunset Park pilot picture, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So, those urban nighttime design initiatives is committed to exploring livability in cities as night. So there's a huge team of professionals working and exploring different perspectives and different analysis to cities. And so when we talk about this public and private light phenomenon or visual punctuation, traffic signals, blinking media, art, and so we need to define significantly the human activity changes through the night, public street and sidewalks. And this is not possible without observation for sure. Lights blink, tear places, then they fade, do the drama to begin. And this is close to theatrical productions because we need to use a word which is dynamic and program lighting atmospheres, and it looks more like different scenes on a theatrical way. But our city has to be think in the same way. We need to create different perspective from our cities. These are a few ideas I want to share, and it's we shape our homes, and then our homes shape us. Winston Churchill. But when we talk about light on an urban level, it's really powerful because it brings attention to what actually is dark shadow. The best cities have really worked with light to exemplify your streets or certain things they want to emphasize. So exploring how domestic lighting and lighting clutter informs wider concepts of home, belonging, and the sense of place, it refers exactly to the public areas, to the outdoor areas. So I really have a particular interest in light and darkness at the nighttime city and how the people can respond to changes in lighting as street lights are replaced with LEDs and a larger mixed-use regeneration schemes redesigning public realm space and investigation on how technologically we can drive redesign impacts on residents' mobility, perception of the places. So there are a lot of calming properties to light when we talk about feeling, the feeling of security, of the feeling of tranquility, of the feeling of peace. And examples like this with some urban interventions with sounds and colors to activate some pedestrian zones that we didn't have the chance to cross to a normal night, so can reactivate for sure the city. So these innovations are experimenting with how light's color, intensity, and design can be intentionally deployed to help improve health and well-being. So when I think in Qatar and we think about the public space and all the effort that Qatar is doing in protecting the environment, so will not be sufficient if we're not part of the rest of the region, because we're part of an ecological system that affects all the activities in the region. So it will be necessary to think in different scale. We cannot just think in a very detailed and small scale or medium scale. We need to think about um, lighting urban plans, and we need to connect this into a larger scale to encourage all the people to preserve and protect the environment and create those hybrid spaces without affecting the environment and doing damages to nature. So the thing is, world needs more light, and and the answer is of course not, because the world needs to get smarter. Most lighting today is old and inefficient. We're changing and we're doing a lot of replacement through LEDs technology to the old ones, and governments are mandating the migration to smarter energy efficient technologies. But this is not just like changing technology, it's just by changing the way we design and we create and we perceive the public space, and how we mix that public areas and combine the physical space to the digital space. And we need to talk about digitalization of life through technologies, not just like a source like LED, because LED can be at the moment one of the top technologies for sure, but in a few years we don't know yet what is coming. It can be organic LEDs, it can be light emitting plasma again, it can be some different materials that reflect like there's a name for that some bacteria that produce lights. So we're exploring things like that, to materials that collects and reflects light without without consuming any energy. So we talk about different type of materials. Um, so the way the people use and interact with light, I think is important, because in the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves, and the process never ends until we die. And the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility. So light on an urban level is really powerful because it brings attention what it actually is the dark shadow. So the best city need to work on this, need to work about technology, yes, energy, sustainability concept, but we cannot forget the most important thing, and is we will work for, we're designing for humans. And this is something that always I have in mind when I'm doing a project, no matter if it's in interior space, if it's in outdoor space. But lighting is not a problem of fixtures or technology. Lighting is a problem of concept. And those conceptualization of the public space and that hybrid space that we're doing in our houses and we're doing in the exterior areas need to be considered, or the activities need to be considered, the way the people moves, the way the people acts, the way the people feels. And we're not talking just about techniques. We need to talk about feelings. And the public space and the hybrid space needs to be a combination of both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great lecture. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
Thank you for the great lecture. As usual, a marvelous lecture. The floor is open for questions. We forgot to tell you that Jorge is a lecturer and he gave lectures in Middle East, North America, South America, Europe, and and he's a specialist in urban lighting. So please ask your question. Can you see them, Salim? Can you see any question?
No, nothing in the chat. Just Umayma was telling that the presentation was amazing. She was just glued to the screen.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
I have one comment, and I'll try to be as neutral as I can be. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's impressive, and as usual, one thing that I think is really important from his lectures. It's always to understand that most of the changes that we can intervene as architects are not related to technology, but to the mindset and to the conceptual design. So I do remember that the first time that I heard about something called dark sky, and Jorge has been speaking about dark sky initiatives several times, and one thing that is interesting to explore here in Qatar is what happened on a place that doesn't have, let's say, a lightning master plan, or that haven't think about the light in terms of the city, because some of the examples that you have shown on your beautiful pictures are punctual examples of some spaces that have been, let's say, treated or designed. But I feel that we are still far away from having like a general city planning in terms of the treatment of the light. What's the natural step for a city to start walking in that direction?
Well, I think the master plan has to be led by government, or by public authorities, or some private companies involved in that process. But when we talk about nighttime city design, it has to be conceived like the like uh, like a huge scale intervention project that divides in different steps and in different stages. So it's not possible to think in a large scale without thinking in a very small scale. We need to have different approaches. But the thing is, when we talk about the urban lighting, is not just about meeting safety needs through code compliance or achieving an aesthetic effect, and it presents a significant opportunity to fundamentally improve the quality of life of urban citizens. So there are so many ways to do it. One is that comes to my mind is to involve the people and do some labs, some real laboratories with people, and get the people get close to public administration, because some of these decisions to the cities are made just in a in a remote table for a team of experts without knowing the needs of the people. So the first thing is we need to think about the city as a living organism that need to be understood from different points of view and perspectives. So I will start at the beginning for the small scale, asking the people, get involved the people, and doing some labs, some real labs with the people to see how they feel, how they perceive the city, what are the activities they're doing, and try to involve community into that design process. Then when we collect all that information, so we can start thinking about how are we going to compose something with that information that we have. So the thing is, incorporating those ideas in urban master lighting plans are the perfect combination for sure. But we need to start thinking in a small scale at the beginning, then upgrade it a little bit to the medium scale, and then think about the lighting master plan. But the first thing is we need to be conscious and be aware of that all that private and local intervention need to be very careful when we think about lighting, because it's a matter of being selfish with the project. So it is my project, so I do whatever I can and with whatever I want. So if I want to add more light in the main facade to make the project looks more luxury, so I don't think about the environment. I don't think about the neighbors. I don't think about the impact of the city. So it is impossible to control um, all the things through a project, or we cannot control all the variables that affects a project in a private intervention. So the thing is, it's a matter of conscience. So through this through education, I think it's something that um, Qatar Hub of Architects is doing very good, and on all the people involved with this is expand the culture of light. So so expanding the culture of light and try to educate the people helps a lot, because this is the long way. It is a long way process that we need to start creating with the new generations. Talking about lighting, talking about lighting pollution, talking about how a project affects not just the surrounding area of the project, but the rest of the city, and in a large scale, the rest of the region. So the thing is combining education at the beginning, doing seminars, workshops, lectures, and all the material that is needed and required to talk about lighting and the intervention of city. This is a multidisciplinary work with architects, engineers, landscaping designers, anthropologists. I mean, there are such a many professionals involved on this. So the point is um, mix everything and start thinking about in a small scale, and then upload it to a big one. Okay, the next question.
If you have some question in the chat, I think, Abdullah.
Huh?
We have question in the chat. So I will just. So Umami is asking about human-centric lighting design. Where does one find the specification?
Would you repeat the question again, please?
Okay, it's in the chat, by the way. So she was asking about the human-centric lighting design. Where does can we find the specification for that?
Well, when we talk about human-centric lighting, I think there is a misunderstanding of the concept of human-centric lighting, because when we talk about how we can adjust, how we can do a fine tuning of of light, and when we try to copy the natural patterns of light through the day, and we see different color temperatures, and we talk about biological rhythm and how to adjust to our internal clock through all those reference to daylight And we're doing all those changes in color temperature that can adjust the biorhythm of your own bodies. That's something that we call now human-centric light. But actually is a misunderstanding, because human-centric light is being always, human-centric light is we're designing for people. We're not designing for the space itself. It's not an empty space that we're designing for. We design for people. So when we talk about human-centric light, that must be always the objective of every project that we do. Think about people, think about needs, think about um, requirements and all the things that the people wants to accomplish in that space. That's human-centric lighting design. And so we need to think about technology. Yes, there are some many ways to dim the light, adjust the light, tune the light, and having a reference of the daylight patterns and how the daylight change, and we can adjust the lighting spectrum of light and try to simulate it in artificial lighting. It is possible, and adjust biological rhythm if it's possible. So there is a lot of different applications from different brands that combines that technology. But I will suggest to not to mix the term human-centric light with that type of technology.
And she was asking also how we could measure the darkness in the terms of light.
Wow, that's a very, very hard question, because all our system is based on photopic vision. That means the vision that we have during the day. Now we have mesopic vision, which is right in the middle, and we have photopic, mesopic, and escotopic vision. So escotopic vision, we talk about night. Mesopic is right in between, day and night. So all our systems are based on photopic lighting, photopic vision. So when we try to measure darkness, we need to move a little bit to not to think about photopic lighting, photopic vision, but scotopic vision. And we talk about the curve of sensibility of the eye. And when we talk about human perception, we need to mention, of course, contrast concept, or we need to mention um, um, the spectrum of light. So when we talk about light as a energy radiation, and we call the visible spectrum to 380 to 780 nanometers, and right in the middle, which is 555 nanometers, which is the highest point of sensibility of the eye. That's when we talk about photopic vision. But during night, we must talk about escotopic vision, and the curve moves a little bit to the left and change the patterns of sensibility of the eye. So we need to talk about contrast, and we need to talk about all the conditions that you want to measure. So there's a few, I think there's a few metrics regarding to candles per square meter, or foot candles that we can perceive, but our eye is not that sensible to measure that. So we need to use a different equipment, probably to measure the minimum amounts of light and determine how your vision perceives that amount of light or not, and try to define the concept of darkness. So if there's someone interested in that, I can give you my information and we can discuss a little bit more later, because it's a quite different field of concept and metrics.
We have also another question from Atisar Al Jubail. She was telling, or he, I'm not sure, she told, you explained hybrid spaces as a combination of real and virtual spaces. What possible ways are you envisioning that the light can be considered in a hybrid space?
Well, yeah, we're talking about augmented reality. We're talking about virtual spaces. We're talking about internet, IoT. So the things that the city needs to move through the same concept. So the public space and the private the virtual space needs to um, be considered or be conceived actually like the space that has to change constantly. The dynamic condition of that type of spaces refers to the possibility of one space to not remain the same appearance that we always see through the day. So the thing is, we are used to go to the same spaces and find the same amount of light, the same type of furniture, the same actually colors, the same things. So the point is now the hybrid space has to have the ability to mutate a lot and to move to adjust the needs of the people that occupy that space. Just to give an example, there's a couple of examples in the Netherlands that they use sound sync system to adjust the light to the amount of noise that is perceived on the ambient. So if there's a lot of noise through those park areas, so that light can just adjust itself and change the color temperature and increase the the lighting level, talking about luxes. So that means that is forcing the people to reduce the amount of noise doing in those areas because probably are close to private areas. So can be combined with sound sync systems with not just the smart city concept that we used to do, creating a network like a Wi-Fi, like lighting fidelity. But the thing is, we will have the chance to adjust the light just by using our mobiles, by adjusting the color temperatures, to changing the colors, to adjusting the amount of lighting levels required to do something. You can adjust. Just think about your own living room in your house. It's not always set in the same time every day. Probably you will need more light to tomorrow than light that you were using yesterday. So the public space has to change a lot and has the flexibility uh, property to adjust to different city conditions and people conditions.
Yes, I think we don't have more questions in the chat. So,
No more questions?
yeah, please. No more questions.
Okay,
No more
thank
questions.
you. No more question?
No more. Yes, I think we need to
No
wrap.
more question. I have a question. When you design lighting for a city or for a whole country, is it like a separate or there is like a level, a national level, a detail level? What is it? Even if you go inside the city, do you differentiate between a neighborhood and others by lighting? Or you use the same lighting, or you just consider the road lighting is the main lighting for the urban city?
Well, actually, I consider different layers of light because designing in a neighborhood is different than a pedestrian area, different than a park, different than a road lighting. So I think there's been a misunderstanding in the conception of public lighting, understood like urban lighting. So there's a kind of mix between both words, and we use road lighting usually to refers to urban lighting, but the layers of intervention are quite different. Designing a road and a pedestrian area, it is totally different than designing the same road and the pedestrian area in a residential area than in a huge cars corridor or highway on the city. So we need to really do the analysis of first the analysis of of the amount of light in that space. There's a scale they call the Bortle scale that measures the amount of light pollution in spaces. So when we talk about different areas, there's a dark sky classification of skies. So it goes to from LZ0 to LC6. So that means urban skies, semi-urban skies, rural skies, semi-rural skies, and all that combination. So it is different to design in the middle of the desert or in the middle of an island than being in the middle of New York City. I mean, the intervention is different no matter if the space looks pretty much the same. So we need to have some different considerations of environment, scales, location, people, schedules. I mean, so I would say that is different type of layers that we need to consider before doing the first concept of lighting.
I'll ask more direct question, like here in Doha.
Can I hear you?
I'll ask more direct question. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask more direct question. Like here in Doha, you can see all the roads are lightened with, I mean, huge lights affect the houses. So there is no housing light can give like what do you call it, an urban style. It is affected mainly by the road. So we have a hierarchy of road from 16 to 64, and all of it with lighting. So even inside the neighborhood, you can see the road lighting, which have more, let's say it governs more than the house lights. It doesn't matter what you use in your house, it will be affected by
Yeah.
the road lights. So road lights is the main road there. And when you're talking about sidewalk have those lights. Here in Doha, I'm not talking about somewhere else. So those, it makes it like more like an morning time instead of an evening time. Sometimes it's good to have a full vision, but it again, it is not reflecting what you are talking about. That's one. Two, we have some area that they played, like in front of Villaggio, they played with the type of lights. And it gave a different view and the view of the shape itself, not the light, but the shape of the poles that carrying the light, and that the way the light is designed, or the way the poles are designed, like have 2, 3, 4 lights instead of the one, just one huge spotlight. Is this part of the lighting design, or this is
Yes.
just a type of a beautification, more like a beautification?
Well, no, I mean, both. I mean, the combination of both are extremely important because you cannot do um, urban lighting or road lighting separate from understanding how the road lighting impacts the closest facade, for example, in neighborhoods or houses. You need to, I mean, let me put this clear. We need darkness because when we're doing some lighting projects, we just talk about uniformity levels. So we want to lead all the road in the same way and all the perimeter areas to the same uniformity levels. And that's a huge mistake. One of the things we need to keep in mind is we need to let some spaces dark. I mean, we need to have voids of light. Everything not everything can be lit, you know. So the thing is, when we talk about how you affect that, it is through the specification of the fixture that they're using for road lighting that has to be very and carefully um, um, specify the quantity and the measures of the fixture, because it's probably they're using very extremely wide beam angle fixtures in both directions, you know, horizontal and cross direction. that effect. So it is a matter of how you're choosing probably the fixture, because I'm not saying that the road lighting is not important. Sure, it is very important. But the thing is, you need to control that speed light that comes from that pole. So it can be probably very vertical and very cut off fixtures that doesn't give you the chance to have a speed light through the facades or through the closed area like neighborhoods. So I think it is a combination of the people that is in charge of public areas or urban and road lighting, and the people that is doing some private projects. So it has to be a double way communication. Did I solve your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Any other question?
No more questions?
No more questions. Thank you so much, Jorge. We
No, I don't hear you.
looking forward to see you in another looking forward to see you in another talk for more specific area. Maybe you can shade on like the type of design, whether it's what do you call it, spot design, or the type of design itself, to explain the people how to design lighting. Maybe
Yeah,
that.
sure. Actually, we can do a workshop. I think this is something we need to have a piece of paper and do some drawings and understand scales and maps and use your hands and digital media, sure. But I think we can do a workshop later to understand the
Like more the
lighting.
cavity method or the spot method?
That's what?
You like more the cavity method or the spot method?
Uh, well, I think both have advantages and disadvantages, because the cave method talk about the reflectance of materials. You know, when we talk about absorbance and reflectance coefficient of materials, and if it's that true, I mean, if we had the chance to really explore that, probably we will be changing the type of materials that we use, like the pavement for the cities. Is like, why you use dark or black pavement, or instead of a white clear concrete that help us to reflect more light and to use better efficient lighting fixtures without with a lot of energy savings. So we need to use more amount of light and more powerful lights, because actually we're working on a very dark surfaces. So I think the exploration of the public spaces will be focused on by changing some materials that probably helps reflect more than 50% the amount of light that hits the surface, so we can reduce at least more than 50% the power of light we're using. So it's a collaboration. So well, both methods this has disadvantages and advantages. We need to adjust, and I think in the case of Qatar, it will be very important to create I mean, it's a city that's changing a lot. So I think it will be so good to create a lighting master plan to regulate some interventions, because there are amazing projects, private and public projects, but those projects are not connected in the same way to the city. I mean, are particular interventions, but we need, I think my suggestion is to bring all those projects together and try to give a little bit of order to the city and to create, and because the changing is just starting. Because there's a lot of technologies that are changing, and all the replacement that that needs to be done to the city. So if there's any master plan that can regulate a little bit, put in on the table some considerations about lighting design master plan, will lead the city through the rest of the development through the upcoming years.
Maybe next time with in your workshop, we'll invite Kahrama and urban planning to be with us in the workshop. This will be
Thanks.
better, so we can discuss it more in terms of specialized people. I think there was a question, what is the methods, point method and cavity method? Am I right, Salim? There wasn't a question?
Yes, yes. This was
Point
a
method and cavity. Thank you so much, Jorge. Now it's with you, Salim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Abdullah. Thanks all the participants today. I hope that you enjoyed our talk for tonight. It will be our last talk for April. I want to wish everyone Ramadan Kareem and see you soon. Thank you and have a good
Thank
night.
you very
Stay
much.
safe. Huh? Stay safe.
Invitation. Stay safe.
Bye.
Abdullah, see you soon. Bye bye. Thank you.